and the warm welcome. Hello, everybody from all around the world. Excited to be here with you for another webinar, and excited to see the large gathering. And I'm hoping it's because this topic is important to you, which is a conversation around leadership. We're going to jump today and talk about adaptive and agile leadership and walk through what are some of these dysfunctions or things that cause an agile transformation to not go well from a leadership perspective, and what is it that we can do about it as leaders to grow, assess and grow our skills. So thank you for being here with me. All right, so a little bit about my background. I hope many of you have watched some of the previous webinars that we have. If you haven't, go to projectmanagement.com under the webinar section and you'll see several related to agile and cultural transformation. But for those of you that don't know my background, I'm originally a software engineer. I was an architect both on the Java, the .NET side, and fell in love with organizational transformation and agile and started my company in 2009. And as Stephen mentioned, our passion is helping organizations transform to agile beyond just IT and with a lot of focus on the leadership and the cultural transformation. I'm in love with a concept called servant leadership, and you'll learn a little bit about that today. I'm also the founder of Agility Health Radar, which is a measurement tool, and we have over 200 videos on agilevideos.com if you would like to continue agile learning. So, as many of you might know, if you've attended any of my previous webinars, I would like to engage you in a conversation right now. So here's the question for you. What are the top leadership behaviors that negatively have impacted your agile transformation? So think about it. If you're in the middle of moving to agile or adopting agile, what are the top leadership behaviors that negatively impact it? If you are not adopting agile, just think about it more generally. If you're in the middle of any kind of change or transformation, what are the most common dysfunctional leadership behavior that get in the way? So go ahead, jot down some notes or post them in the chat window and we'll look at it. Micromanagement, not relinquishing control. Allowing the team to self-manage, no buy-in from senior executives, falling back to old habits, lack of communication, need to understand specific requirements, not engaged or supportive, risk adverse, not willing to change, startup time, controls, commitment and cultural change, not understanding the difference of the agile mindset, bad training, aversion to change. All right, those are really good. Agile is the Wild West. I like that one, Eric. Hypocrites. Oh, tough one. Insecurity about change, lack of engagement. Okay, those are good. Those are really good ones. So that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about some of these items, and what I have for you in this next slide over here are some of the top ones that we found, which really could hinder an agile transformation. So let's go through them. Telling the team how to do the work and managing day-to-day tasks. So you guys already mentioned that, which is a lot of the micromanagement, not knowing as managers, and so obviously this is even beyond just leaders, but as managers, that's what they used to do before. Managers were there to tell the team what to do and how to do it. And so when you start transforming to Agile, we kind of need a little bit more self-organization and self-management. But we do need from leaders their vision and their direction and their acceptance criteria. So this one right over here is definitely one that could, I got my little pointer going now, but this one is one that could impede a transformation. Top-down decision-making, no input from the team. So just assuming, again, still using the older style of just decisions being made from the top and not engaging teams or collaborating or even identifying their recommendations for change. No clarity on the vision, direction, or any measurable goals. So again, let's do Agile or let's move in this new direction, but not a lot of meat around, so what does that really mean? How are we going to measure success? I think some of that ambiguity, which is normal, I think, part of a transformation, there is ambiguity, but I think 100% ambiguity with no direction and no vision and no guidance, I think that's also kind of going to the extreme. Constantly shuffling people between priorities and changing team members and pulling people in and out of teams is very dysfunctional for agile teams. Command and control style of leadership, and I think many of you mentioned that here, which is still kind of the traditional very directive, top-down, I tell you what to do. And quite frankly, that has worked for years in different areas, but now that we're shifting and saying we want to build high-performing, self-organizing teams, that style is no longer beneficial. Tactical focus, no strategic foresight. So I've met many, many managers, and they are kind of in the weeds. And actually, I'll be honest with you, as I've worked with lots of even executives, I would say that managers, directors, VPs, and executives are all operating one layer below where they really need to be. I actually always tell them that is I'd like to lift all of you up one level strategically, because there's a lot more strategic direction and process improvement and organizational transformation and all of that needs to happen. But managers are still sort of focused on day-to-day work management, which is really not as helpful anymore if you're moving to Agile. Status quo, no effort to improve processes. So accepting the, well, everything's the way that it should be, and well, we've had these problems for years, there's nothing I can do about it. And again, kind of going back to very tactical focus, no strategic process improvement focus. Unrealistic deadlines and expectations set by the wrong people, forcing people to work overtime, being okay with people working at an unsustainable pace, instead of protecting the team from unrealistic expectations from the business, forcing the team. So again, very tactical. Knowing that we've been, I call it like it's like operating under magic. There's really no such thing as magic. When you commit to a date and it's unrealistic and you tell people to, just kill themselves to make that date, it's really just bad planning. So, from a management perspective, being more strategic would allow us to plan better. Disengagement and lack of visibility into deliverables. So what I mean here is there's a lot of managers that are disengaged from the actual team and the actual transformation. Especially, I would say, honestly, some of the leaders that say, go do Agile and then just let me know how it all works out. But they're not necessarily engaged in rolling up their sleeves and knowing that this is a transformation. This is going to require your seat at the table and your engagement. Even as an executive, I've talked to a lot of CIOs and I say, I need you to be part of this. This isn't something that we just go do. This is something that you will need to be engaged in as a sponsor. The lack of visibility into deliverables, so let me take you back to managers and directors. A lot of teams say, I don't know what you're working on, right? I mean, and so we're going to be very open and transparent through the seminar in that management's working on so many different things that sometimes the teams want to know, so what are your deliverables and how are you helping us? And there's no visibility into what is it that you're actually working on, even though they are working on a lot of different things and they're going to a lot of meetings and making progress. But I think I'm going to sort of introduce a concept here where management actually has a backlog themselves and can leverage Agile as a way of executing their backlog. Change resistance and no change management plans. So we're all saying that we want to change, but some managers really honestly don't really want to change. They're either afraid of it, they're afraid of losing control over what they used to do before. And my philosophy here is if you don't teach people their new role, don't expect them to support the change. And I feel like this is something that really is a reflection of us in the Agile community. We focused a lot on training teams on Agile, and then we've done a great job recently getting to the executive layer and teaching them what it means to do an enterprise Agile transformation. But quite frankly, we forgot about the managers. We really have. We haven't explained to managers what is their new role and what are the new skills that are required to shift into this this new way. We've just taken away a lot of their control and, please don't tell the teams what to do. Don't manage their tasks. But we haven't said, and here's the alternative, here's what we want you to focus on. So I would say that I always like to not lay blame on others. I like to say, what is it that we can do to improve? And I really think there's a lot more investment in leading and training managers on their new role. And again, there's no change management plan, so we're just assuming that everything is going to change, but there's so much resistance to change within an organization, and there needs to be a change management plan that's very positive. Not investing in learning about enterprise Agile, what I mean here is there's a lot of organizations that believe that Agile is something that only teams do, and quite frankly, only software teams do. And I would say that was great, but that's like a 6 years ago conversation. Over the last, I would say 5 years, a lot of companies have really invested in Agile beyond even IT, and realizing, so if you guys have a background in Lean, when Lean was first born, Lean really was born through manufacturing. It was really there for Toyota. And a lot of people assumed it was really just for manufacturing. Well, all right, let's fast forward to today. Everybody knows you can apply lean, value stream, process optimization, cutting out waste, all of that to any business process, right? It's kind of universal. Process improvement, process optimization. Same thing's happening with Agile. Agile applies to sales, it applies to finance. We've done Agile way beyond IT in hardware, in business areas. We have claims departments using Agile. I just came back last week from teaching a sales department how to leverage Agile and Kanban and start having weekly sprints. So there's kind of a lack of understanding on what Agile means at the enterprise level, what it means to achieve what I call business agility. All right, chasing shining objects, no focus or alignment. And so what this is about is really managers, executives, and leaders are really still bringing in all sorts of shining objects, new ideas, new priorities, and not allowing the team to focus on finishing what they started. So those are not all, but those are many of some of the dysfunctions that we want to talk about. So I am going to go in and talk to you about the roots of command and control. During our servant leadership workshop, we like to jump in and say, where does command and control behavior come from? So I'm going to give you sort of the top 5, and I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list. There's probably more, but these are the ones that are the most popular that we've talked to. One of them is I'm a perfectionist. Now, talk to me honestly here. How many of you, raise your hand or just say, yes, me. How many of you are recovering perfectionists? What I mean by that is you really want things to be done a very specific way, and that way is your way. All right, I see you guys coming. Yes, thank you. I'm a recovering perfectionist myself. Perfectionism is not a bad thing, right? Perfectionism, people that are perfectionists really care about quality, right? They want things to be done really well. They want to make sure that there's no errors, that customers are satisfied. And a lot of times if you're a perfectionist, you've done something before and you've gotten great feedback and you know that it works well. And so when somebody else comes on board and you are training them or coaching them, you could become a little bit of a micromanager and start telling them exactly what to do, how to do it, and that person can really feel overwhelmed because they don't feel like their idea is being heard. They don't feel like you know that there's a different way of doing something. And so perfectionism, even though the intentions of a perfectionist is quality, right? Quality, it can come across the wrong way if you do not catch yourself and realize, I am being such a perfectionist right now that I'm telling everybody to do things my specific way, and therefore I'm micromanaging their work, and I'm not allowing innovation and creativity to happen. The next one is called I'm always right. So let me ask you guys out there, how many of you are the recovering I'm always right? I'm always right means that my opinion, I call it the smartest person in the room. The smartest person in the room syndrome is when you're with a group of people, you probably are very analytical, you probably are very data-driven, you might be an architect or something like that, and you always feel like you've already done all of the research, and so I really need you to follow my opinion. So let's see. Okay, we've got a few yeses. We've got some people with sometimes. I like it. Thank you for being open and honest. All right. So this, what I call the smartest person in the room syndrome, if this is you, here's what I want you to reflect on. Because I'm a recovering, I'm always right person as well. Especially when I was younger and I was an architect, I felt strongly that I had done all the research and I had all the facts straight to convince the team that my way was the right way. The problem is, as time goes by, people around you are not listening to you anymore because you are not actually opening up space for more people to provide ideas. The other issue with the I'm always right root cause of command and control is you don't realize that there are different ways of looking at the same problem. For example, there's an analytical way of looking at a problem and a solution, which is very data and research. There's also what we call a social way of looking at a problem. For example, if you're getting a new tool and you're making a decision to buy a new tool, you might have done all the research in the world to identify that this tool is the right one for the company because it has all of the right features. But let's just say nobody likes it. Nobody likes the way it looks. No one enjoys the usability of it. It looks old. It looks traditional. It's too complex. So from a social perspective, it just doesn't sit well with people. Let's also say from a conceptual perspective, long-term, our long-term vision doesn't fit with this tool because it doesn't integrate with other things that we want it to integrate with. So the idea of being always right means that you're looking at things from one lens and you're not looking at it from all the other lenses. So one of the things we always teach leaders here is you do need to take a step back and listen more. Whether you're a leader, a manager, or even, like I mentioned, an architect or a subject matter expert, ask more questions as opposed to provide more solutions. Don't put your name behind every solution. Well, my solution, my idea is we need to do things this way. Try to say, well, here's an idea. Here's an option. What does everybody think about that one? So try to disconnect the solution that you're coming up with your name, because then if somebody wants to argue or they have a different approach, then they're going to have to actually argue with you, and it becomes very contentious. The third root of command and control is the I don't trust you. I don't trust you, so I need to watch what you're doing so that you don't make a mistake. So this one goes back into you might be a new person on the team. I've already done this work before, and I still haven't established trust with you. So I'm going to look over your shoulder quite frequently and look over what you're doing and correct all of the mistakes that you're making. And what happens is as people live through that for a very, very long time, they start to lose their self-confidence, self-esteem. They start to feel disempowered. And sometimes you can do that as a manager to an individual, or you can do it to a whole team. And so when the team comes up with a solution, you come in as a manager and you discount everything that they just said that they wanted to do. And you say, no, 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 I want it to be done this way instead. So that kind of shows a lack of empowerment and a lack of trust. And slowly what you're going to have is no innovation, no creativity. The team will not come up with new ideas because they feel like those ideas will be knocked down anyway. I like authority is number 4, and I like authority, so do as I say. Now, this is just the old school. I like power. I like prestige. I like that I'm now an executive or a leader or a vice president, or I have a fancy office. And so because I like authority, you know, the way that I was raised up, or maybe the way that you've seen management and leaders, is the minute that you have a bigger office, you tell people what to do. And so command and control just comes from this concept of that's what I believe leadership is about. The minute I raise up in a company, I tell people what to do. So if that's where you're coming from, yep, it's the boss syndrome, as Jeff is saying here. It's I'm the big boss. I think you should take a step back and completely revisit and relook and rethink about what leadership means. Leadership really is about growing others and having others grow and learn and do better and become leaders themselves. And that's sort of the heart of servant leadership. The idea of leadership is really about top down, you know, everybody's serving me and I'm the big boss. That's kind of older school. If you go into more of these companies that are transforming to Agile, that is part of the transformation and the shift that needs to happen. The last one is I'm looking out for me. If you do this, I'm going to get my next raise. So this one's pretty straightforward. I'm sure you guys are relatively familiar with people that are what I call the ladder climbers. It's never really about the team. It's never really about the business. It's never really about value. Everything that they're thinking about comes from the lens of my next raise, what's in it for me. The problem with this as you're transforming to Agile is those are the individuals that could create silos and become very departmental focused and kind of build the kingdom. And that doesn't work very well when you're trying to put on what we call the enterprise hat, what's good for the company, how can we add value, it doesn't matter how many people report to you or don't report to you, how can I empower this team? So again, if this is where you're coming from, rethink and relook. And I'll tell you that I've seen so many leaders grow and actually move up, if that's the way you're thinking about it, because they focused on adding value and focused less on just actually climbing the ladder. So hopefully this has been helpful. But these are the 5 top command and control traits that cause leaders to be commanding and controlling. So now let's focus on what does it mean to have a high performance culture. Let's kind of look at the vision of the future. We really define a high-performance culture as one where there's clarity. Clarity on what should we focus on right now, what's the most important thing and why, and how should we behave as a team, right? And that actually is inspired by the book called The Advantage from Patrick Lencioni. If you haven't read that book, please do, and share it with your leaders. Focus. Focus is really about this magic of allowing people to finish what they started. There's so many companies right now that are multitasking like crazy. It's almost becoming like just a national, syndrome of not getting work done. So focus is really let teams and let individuals finish what they started, as opposed to starting so many things and then coming back and saying, oh, we're so busy, but we're not actually delivering any value or any outcomes. Predictable execution. Predictable execution is really about how can we deliver value and measure success in a very repeatable way. So whether we're a business team, an IT team, we all know, what does it mean to have a product owner? What does it mean to have a daily stand-up meeting, and why? Why should we have a wall, whether it's a physical wall or a virtual wall, to track our backlog and our deliverables? Why should we break all of our work down into small 2-week increments so that we can measure success? Predictable execution just means that we have a rhythm. We plan every 2 weeks. We plan strategically every quarter. We stop once a year to do strategic planning, but there's a cadence. In the middle of all of that, we say having a healthy culture. So everything that I just mentioned to you, clarity, focus, predictable execution, are all very much process transformation. In the middle, really, a healthy culture is really about making sure people are happy and engaged while they're doing all of this. And as I mentioned, the reference was to the book called The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. So what companies are doing today is they're starting to move away through this agile or business agility transformation, whatever you want to call it. They're moving away from this structure of teams that work in silos. So we all do the same thing, and then we go ahead and hand off work to this team. And that team of business analysts hands off requirements to the designers. And this team kind of hands off to whatever, execution developers. And this could be any group. So this doesn't have to just be IT. It could be any group. What we're moving to is saying, you know what, let's redesign our organization around cross-functional teams that can hit a target. Some companies have done this successfully, but they're still project teams. What I mean by project teams is they are still put together and then dismantled once the project is done. So I'm going to even challenge you, and I really will be challenging you today, to think about it even at a higher level of just forming stable teams, which means instead of these teams being the core of how we design our organization, we're actually going to design our organization just around stable teams and then change their backlog, right? So the teams stay together. They go through norming, forming, storming, norming, and performing, and then we keep them together. So we just change their backlog and their deliverables. So that's a concept I want you to think about. I know it's a challenging concept, but if we know that a cross-functional team can really add value, then why don't we focus on designing and supporting and leading cross-functional teams? So what is the idea of adaptive leadership? What's the concept behind it? Adaptive leadership is really the work of energizing, empowering, and enabling teams to rapidly and reliably deliver business value. How do we do that? Well, we engage them with the customers, we have them continuously learn, and they continuously adapt to an ever-changing environment. I don't think there's a company I haven't talked to recently that hasn't said they're in the middle of tremendous change, whether it's because the world of digital internet has changed their business, whether it's because of the disruptions of new businesses starting up and startups, whether it's because the government mandating different things for them to change. I mean, every company is going through a major transformation. And if that's the case for you, then you will need to help your leaders learn how to become more adaptive leaders and lead through this kind of change. So some of you might look at all this and say, well, this is all kind of soft stuff. This is all, as one director said, this is foo-foo. You know, engaging the teams and empowering them and making them feel good. How does that impact my bottom line? Well, of course it does. Agility generates 30% higher profits. Who said that? The Economist magazine. An overwhelming majority of executives, 88% of them, cite that organizational agility is a key global success, and that companies that have actually used Agile grow revenue by 37% faster and generate 30% higher profits than non-Agile. So for those of you that are saying, Agile is just a whole bunch of hype, no, actually, it's not a bunch of hype. There's a whole book called The Business Value and ROI of Agile that has case study after case study and statistics around companies that are adopting Agile methods and adopting Lean. And I'm actually going to put Agile and Lean together and how much more productive they are and how much profitable they are. Yet most companies admit they're not even flexible enough to compete successfully. And many of the internal barriers to adopting Agile is really responsiveness, slow decision making, and just a risk-averse culture, cultures that don't want to change or fear change. So let's talk about managers. Let's go into this world of how managers are promoted today so we can understand why there's going to be a transformation needed. Managers are promoted because they're great contributors. If somebody's doing a great job well, then they're promoted to a leadership position, right? So what's the problem with that? Well, there's a problem in that if they were traditionally a problem solver, they know how to solve a problem really well and solve that piece of the puzzle. When you become a leader, especially a leader of a team, your job now is not to solve the problem, it's to become a coach and a facilitator and share with the team how they should solve the problem. The impediment to that is trust. A lot of managers, because they knew how to solve the problem, really have to go through and figure out, how am I going to trust and let go of the specific way that I wanted to solve it, and how will I empower and coach and grow this team? Now, we're not talking about blind trust. We're not saying, okay, don't teach them anything, don't give them any vision, don't give them any acceptance criteria or guidelines, and just have them experiment and figure out what they want to do. We are saying that, of course, as a manager and as a leader, you are accountable for providing a vision, providing acceptance criteria, and then coaching and guiding the team, but letting them figuring out the how. This was a very impactful blog that I had actually a couple years ago, and it's had many, many hits. And so if you're interested in reading this blog, which is the role of Agile managers, you can go to bit.ly/Agile Manager. But I kind of talked about this dilemma that we've had. Some of the managers that I've met are really subject matter experts. Remember, I just said they got promoted because they know how to do that job very, very well. So their focus is providing expertise in solving problems. They provide expert opinion, they transfer knowledge. They're like, think about the developer who's now the management of developers. They know how to code really well. Think about them as the claims manager who used to process claims themselves. They know that inside and out. So they're a subject matter expert. So there are some other managers that they are work management and firefighting focused. What I mean by that is they're kind of what I call an Uber project manager. They spend 90% of their time resource allocation, shuffling people around, changing priorities, tracking the work that's getting done, responding to business folks based on their priorities, and then firefighting and removing impediments, right? So remember this because I'm going to talk to you about why these change today. There are some other managers that are very much focused on process improvement. They love whatever field that they're in. Maybe it's web development, or maybe it is process improvement, or they love Lean Six Sigma, or they love the .NET world, or they're really hardware engineering experts. And so they like to identify and address inefficiencies. They like to provide necessary tools. They love establishing standards and best practices. They're all about training and coaching people and just making things better, helping the actual teams get better and improve. Now, last but not least, some managers love people development. Right? People development is the one-on-one coaching sessions. They really have a very high emotional intelligence and soft skills. They like meeting with individuals and solving problems. They like coaching Jane on, how she can come across the right way, why she's such a dominator and she needs to potentially change the way that she comes across in a meeting. They like to take the quiet people and coach them on how to improve and be a little bit more vocal with their opinion. So let's just imagine that this is Jerry here, and Jerry has all these responsibilities as a manager to do. Well, what's the problem? As you can see, there is a problem when you move to Agile. Let's kind of look about this Agile chart, and I'm sure if you've been in any of my other webinars, you've seen this before, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit differently today. So this is the basic structure of an Agile team. We have a product owner that normally comes from the business, and they tell the team what to work on, why, and in what order. This product owner manages this backlog. Then we have the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is the process facilitator. They're the ones that make sure that the team is focused on the right things. They facilitate the daily meetings, the planning meetings. They remove impediments. A lot of that task management, day-to-day task management, kind of comes right over here. The technical lead or the solution lead. So the solution lead is the person that helps the team with the vision for the how. If those teams need to be mentored, coached, our solution leads pair with the individuals. They're normally senior folks that know how to solve the problem or can provide some guidance if needed. A team could have one or several solution leads, but typically they kind of understand how to translate the what into the how vision, and then the team sort of executes day to day their tasks, their vision, and of course they contribute to the how as well. Based on what I just explained to you here, do you see the dilemma? Because managers used to do this, they used to do this, and they used to do that. And now in Agile, we're saying, hey, managers, we really don't want you to be that involved day to day. So what should the managers focus on? Let's go back again. What Agile really wants managers to focus on is process improvement and people development. Being the subject matter expert and doing a lot of the day-to-day task management is really something that the Agile team sort of takes over with their product owner, their solution lead. And so if there's nobody else that knows how to do that but you, what I'm challenging you to do right now, let's say you are a manager and you did all these 3 roles, you need to start figuring out, how do I empower others to be the solution leads? How do I empower the Scrum Master to manage the day-to-day task? And how do I become more open to my business customer, my internal business product owners, taking over managing the backlog so that I can focus on coaching and process improvement? If you are a manager, and you might kind of understand that Agile also scales. What I mean by scales is that this is one team, but if I have multiple teams that are all working on the same program, so some people call this entity up over here a program leadership team. Some people call it a product leadership team. Some people that are using scaled Agile or SAFe refer to this as a release train. If you're using the Spotify model, you're going to be calling it a tribe. It doesn't really matter what we call this. It's basically a group that is in charge of managing the work across multiple teams and making sure that there's, dependencies are being managed, that all of this work is aligned to a real backlog that's going to add value. So pay attention to this. If I'm a manager, another position that you can take, so let's say, I really enjoy solving problems, maybe I can become a solution lead at the program level. Or maybe I can really become this program manager or the release train engineer at this level. Or maybe I can become part of this team. I'm being honest with you here and telling you that for a lot of companies that we have helped transform, we have found out that some managers just don't fit. That's not what we're telling them the new role of the manager is, which is to develop people and coach them and to improve processes, is not who they are. They really are subject matter experts, or they really do like managing work. And so what's had to happen is we basically showed them and said, well, here are some other areas that you can go into where you could still add value. Now I'm going to show you another picture. It's going to scare you a little bit because it's big. But in a lot of companies that we're working with today are moving to what we call enterprise stable teams. Enterprise stable teams is the same picture that I just showed you guys, but now it's scaled up. So I am really designing my whole organization based on these teams that can deliver value. All these teams are aligned by a value stream, by a product, by a program, and I have instituted an enterprise portfolio leadership team where all of the work really is prioritized and aligned at the portfolio level, and then it flows down into these value streams or product lines, and then from there it flows into the team's backlogs. Now I know this is a very advanced concept. If you're new to Agile and this is the first time you're hearing about Agile, this will become overwhelming to you. You're like, what is this? This is a complete organizational redesign. And yes, it is. There's many companies, as they mature in Agile, they are no longer interested in how do I solve the problem of applying Agile within one team. They are really applying Agile at the program level, at the value stream level, and at the enterprise portfolio level. What I want to show you here is this concept of communities of practice, because again, we're focusing on the role of a manager. Communities of practice are really there to foster process improvement enable standards and best practices, enable knowledge sharing and cross-learning. Because the problem you're going to have when you move to this model is everybody's cross-functional, which is awesome. Work is going to actually get done. But the engineer here, here, and here might be using different standards and different tools. So if you don't have an engineering excellence community of practice for all those people to continue to meet once a week or every other week so they can learn from each other, then quality is going to start to deteriorate. Again, I have testers. Let's say I have testers within all of those different teams. If I don't have a testing excellence community of practice, we're not going to have standards and best practices. We're going to be doing things in a different way. So there's many types of communities of practice that you can create, but the goal, again, is to enable process improvement, standards, knowledge sharing, all of that. Again, I'm going back to the role of the manager again. Managers could lead communities of practice. You could help foster this knowledge sharing across all the various teams as part of your process improvement. So again, if you're looking at this new role of an Agile manager and you're saying, gosh, I feel so threatened by it because I'm not doing what I used to do before, which is day-to-day task management and shuffling people around, I don't get what my new role is going to be, this is what I'm sharing with you. Communities of practice need help. These are sort of new type of program and product leadership teams and value streams where you can contribute to them. There's going to be an enterprise portfolio leadership team, and this is not just about a traditional PMO leading anymore. This is very much a very lean and agile way of operating at the enterprise level. So if the idea of coaching and developing people doesn't resonate with you, there are other roles within the organization that are extremely valuable that you can play. Again, this model that you're seeing in front of you is an alternative model to just looking at the picture of who reports to who. This has been my famous quote, is if all you're showing me in your company is the hierarchy of who reports to who, and you can never show me a picture of how does the work flow, how does your strategic initiatives flow down every quarter until they get executed by the team, then the work is not flowing because you don't even have a picture that shows you how it's flowing. So this is the idea behind an enterprise stable teams model. Now let's get a little bit back to more of a tactical conversation around, so what do we do? What do we really do? I've kind of taken you all the way up a level, strategic. Now let's go into what do I do to help managers learn and transform. So if you are, remember that Jerry, poor Jerry, who had to do a little bit of everything? We're trying to help Jerry understand what's my new role as a manager. Here's what we want you to do, Jerry. Be more strategic and less tactical. Be more strategic and less tactical. Develop and coach people around you. Own some of these organizational level process improvement. I cannot tell you, let's just go back to this picture. I cannot tell you, as part of standing up all these agile teams, we use something called our team health radar assessment from Agility Health. And so we assess the health of all of those teams. What the teams are able to raise up through that assessment is something called organizational growth items. Organizational growth items are all of the things that are impeding them, and they kind of raise them up to this level over here and say, hey guys, can you help us? These are some things that are blocking our performance. So those organizational growth items that the teams are reporting on really should be owned by the management layer because it's now a clear backlog. It's a backlog coming from the teams and from the management and leadership level of things that need to be addressed for those teams to become high performing. Why wouldn't that be the priority of managers? Like, honestly, the way I look at it is if managers are not working on those gaps, those organizational issues completely directly coming from the team saying, these are impeding us, they are slowing us down, please help us with the following. If you're not working on that, I'm not really sure what else is more important. You know, growing people and removing and addressing these organizational bottlenecks is, in my opinion, of the highest value and the highest priority, because that's how we're going to accelerate and achieve business agility. Now, part of what we do is we teach managers how to apply agile thinking and agile processes to this kind of a backlog. Leading communities of practice, I mentioned it to you in the last slide, that there are communities of practice and managers who are very passionate can really own and help lead it and engage the community and, you know, engage them so it's a self-organizing community, but it adds value to people that attend. Foster creativity and innovation. So instead of becoming that top-down, here's my decision, here's my solution, How can we help people brainstorm? How can we create innovation labs? How can we let people come up with new ideas of improving and accelerating and getting better? Learn the business. I would tell you honestly that the days of, oh, well, this is business, this is IT, this is this department, that's kind of slowly going away. We all should be the business, folks. We should all learn the business. We need to know who our customers are, internal to the business and outside of the business. And we need to enable the fast delivery of value, which is the definition of agility, to them, right? Being flexible, being nimble, and delivering value very, very quickly is what we want you to learn. So the idea that as a manager, I just learn my discipline, I learn about test automation, or I learn about engineering, or I learn about claims, or whatever it is that you're managing, that's not enough anymore. We want you to learn the business problems as well. Let me take you to a senior leader. So Jane over here, she's not a manager, she's a director or a vice president. So what do we want our vice presidents and our directors and even our C-level executives to do or to learn? Well, we definitely want you to be more strategic and less tactical. I mentioned this to you from the beginning. I really believe everybody is like one level below where they need to be. Even strategic leaders who are supposed to be more strategic are still fighting too many day-to-day fires and kind of becoming more what I call responsive instead of proactive, reactive instead of proactive. So we want you to be more strategic, less tactical, solve even more strategic problems. If there's anything that these managers, remember back over here, process improvements that they were not able to solve, actually part of Agility Health, we have a third level of a backlog. So we have a team backlog for growth. We have what we call the management and the multi-team organizational level. And then we have an enterprise backlog for change. So please solve those problems. Lead the organization through change. Don't be the person who's change resistant. You need to be the leader of change. So learn about change management. Understand the vision of what the change is about. Be able to be a spokesman for the change. Get people excited. Get them energized. Get them enthusiastic about it. Be mindful of the various roles that are going to be impacted by this change and have a change management plan for them. Design a lean organizational structure. Again, like I mentioned, I know this is threatening. I know this feels like, oh my God, what are you saying here? We're going to have to change the way that our teams are organized. Yes, I'm saying that. I'm saying flatten out your organizational structure. You don't need 10 levels of management to manage people. Teams, high-performing teams, are very self-organizing. They deliver value very, very quickly. They don't need 10 levels of managers above them. So put managers to good use. Design the team so that they are holistic, right? That they are holistic teams that can deliver value. They're not silo teams. They are truly cross-functional teams. Go back to that stable teams design that I just showed you and figure out how can we deliver value in the most lean way without needing, 13 levels of approvals to get something done. Develop leaders who lead teams. This is important, guys. I think a lot of leaders before kind of try to develop managers and management skills. And I will tell you, the concept of management is really related to work. Work needs to be managed. People need leadership. And what you're doing now is you're not just developing leaders that are leading individuals, you are developing leaders that know how to lead high-performing teams. So the concept of teams, what makes a great team? What's the makeup of a team? What do they look like? What does it mean to be a healthy team when you're forming, storming, norming, and performing? How do I measure the success of a team and how do I help them? All of those, this is a new breed of leadership that we're looking for. It's way beyond coaching individuals only, but it's even adding that layer of building high-performing teams. Here's another one that's a big epic. Applying lean portfolio planning. Lean portfolio planning, what does that mean? Here, let me take you back real quickly. It means managers and not managers, but executives and VPs and a lot of the business leaders. When you are thinking about the enterprise backlog of initiatives that you want, we're going to have you learn through lean portfolio management how to break those things down into quarterly chunks and how to revisit your priorities every quarter, right? Whether you're using scaled agile as a method or DAD, the disciplined agile delivery, or any of the other Scrum of Scrums, the quarterly planning and quarterly breakdown of these initiatives is extremely important. The other thing, honestly, is let people finish what they start, right? You can't just keep coming up with new ideas and approve them and say go. And then what happens is some of these project managers are stealing and borrowing resources from all over just to get that new number one project done. So the idea of lean portfolio management and allowing work to flow and being pulled instead of being pushed, that's a critical executive and leadership level learning that needs to happen, way beyond this webinar, of course. Learn the business and enable agility. This is exactly what we had for managers as well. We basically said, you need to learn the business. We no longer, I mean, this is something that Gartner has reported on, Forrester. Even CIOs are starting to change. CIOs that are just technically savvy, that's not what we're looking for anymore. Of course you need to know technology, but more and more companies are hiring business savvy CIOs, business savvy vice presidents and leaders, people that understand the market, understand the consumers, understand what we need to do to be able to compete in this new market. And so learn the business and enable business agility. I wanted to share this with you because obviously we have an assessment tool and a measurement tool for everything, but within Agility Health, we have what we call the Business Agility Health Radar. So if I'm working with a group of executives and leaders that are saying, hey, we want to transform, how do we transform? How do we move towards this business agility? I kind of let them know that there's process transformation, there's leadership and cultural impact, there's strategy and organizational structure impact to a transformation, and yes, of course, technology will need to be transformed as well. So if you can't see this very well, you might want to go to the big screen view, but I'll walk through this very, very quickly. A lot of companies that are moving to Agile right now are only focused here, which is what I call team agility. Team agility is standing up Agile teams and teaching them how to do Agile. And then as they mature, they learn how to do program and product agility. They learn about lean product development, and then a little bit of release train and scaled Agile and program management. How do I enable Agile across multiple teams, which is awesome. But there's portfolio agility. What I just told you about lean portfolio management, and really, and I would honestly say this is the biggest bang for the buck, you guys. Having executives and leaders start to really prioritize and focus and making sure that the work that's coming from the top is actually aligned to business value and letting us finish what we started and breaking down these big things into small quarterly chunks, that's huge. That has a huge impact. Enterprise agility is about leaning out a lot of those big processes that you've had. Let's just say your business case or the way that you fund projects or your requirements gathering process that takes 3 months to even gather requirements. That's not going to enable agility for you. So you're going to have to lean this out. Having a measurement framework. So instead of just working with no measurement, how do you know you're getting better? And obviously we're pretty biased to Agility Health because we built it, but having some level of measurement framework to know if your teams are doing well, if your programs are doing well, if your portfolio, how are the leaders doing? We just believe in measurement. Measure and grow, measure and grow. Customer focus is having the customers have a seat at the table through all of this. And so all this is process transformation. Leadership and culture is about senior leadership and management changing their leadership style. And that's honestly what I just walked you through. I basically walked you through what all senior leaders and managers will need to do. Engagement and happiness is really a cultural assessment of, are we engaging people? Are we improving morale? Are we becoming one team instead of the silo teams that we are today? Are you starting to change your working environment, guys? I'm talking about your physical environment and your virtual environment to be more open, to be conducive to collaboration. You know, getting rid of those big and tall cubes where nobody can talk to each other, right? That's all changing. You know, just look at the new workspaces of the future. Agile talent management. Oh my goodness! If you have not watched my last webinar, which is called Agile Performance Management, check it out. But the HR world is about to be disrupted. The way that we do performance management today is very, very complicated, and it's very, I would say, not very agile because it's just the manager that tells me how I'm doing. But in the new world, we really need teams to give each other feedback, and we need performance to be something that's continuous, not a once-a-year thing. Also, job descriptions, how we hire, how we train, and how we onboard people. So talent management is truly impacted. I'm not going to go through all of the other ones in detail, but organizational structure, we just talked about designing stable teams and rolling them out. Technology transformation to DevOps. If this is overwhelming to you, I get it. But I want you to know that if you're an executive or a leader, this matters to you. This is the kind of assessment and this is the roadmap that we build with executives and leaders. If you are a project manager only, this will be like over your head or like, I don't understand. This is way too big. This is way beyond what I need to focus on. And that's probably true. But this webinar is about leadership. And it was really hard for me to describe what leaders need to know to transform an organization without taking you one level above and helping you become a little bit more strategic. All right, we're almost done, so let me give you a roadmap. When we are transforming companies, and I just wanted to share this with you, obviously this is what we use, but I wanted to share it with you. When companies come to us and say, hey, we've got lots of managers and lots of executives that need to start learning this, what we first tell them is it's a journey. There's no one workshop or one class that's going to get you there. And typically, we start the journey through servant leadership. We really like to, this is a specific workshop or learning that helps them understand the roots of command and control, lets them self-reflect. We give them feedback through a 360 assessment, and then we have these leaders develop a growth plan for how they're going to change their leadership style and become more of a servant leader or an empowerment leader than a command and control directive leader. Even if you're an executive, we feel like you should start here because this is non-negotiable. This is sort of the heart of this transformation. Leading high-performing teams is really around assessing the maturity of teams, forming, stabilizing, and optimizing teams, and knowing who they are and how do I interact with teams during those various stages. Moving managers from tactical to strategic leadership is very important, teaching them the skills to understand how do you develop a vision, how do you develop a strategy, and how do you execute on that strategy. Agile leadership. So remember we just talked about the new role of managers? Remember we just talked about, this new world of stable teams, lean portfolio management. This is scary stuff. And I believe that if you do not teach your management directors and VPs about this, that they will start to resist the change because they're not knowledgeable of what my new role will be. And from an executive perspective, and again, this is really only for executives and senior leaders, organizational redesign, leading change, enterprise agility, and systems thinking is something that we typically take them through. So I wanted to share this with you because I like sharing information and I wanted you to kind of use this as a roadmap yourself and within your own company figure out, where do I want to start? You don't have to do all this. This might be overwhelming for you. Great, just start with servant leadership. Just start here. There's also some foundational skills that we found are critical, which is for leaders to know how to facilitate a lot of those large cross-functional meetings. I'm finding that with Agile, because we bring a lot of people together that didn't work with each other before, if leaders don't know how to facilitate, we're going to be in big trouble. Coaching and crucial conversations is also important. How do you execute on that roadmap? Come up with a quarterly plan. For every company that we work with that we're doing a leadership transformation, we basically say, what do you want to learn in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter? And honestly, this could take a couple of years. The idea of transforming leaders through one workshop is just not even practical. You might want to give them, I will give you an example. For managers, manager level, we take them through this first and second quarter and third quarter. We don't necessarily take them through the advanced concepts here. But for executives and leaders, we take them through like servant leadership, tactical to strategic, and then through this kind of content. So my friends, I hope that this was helpful for you. For all of you that have listened, that love this video and want to even watch more, you can use the promo code TRANSFORM14 and join agilevideos.com. That's our e-learning library with lots of webinars and videos as well. If you would like to join, feel free to do that, 14 days. Now let me take some quick questions from all of you. If you want to download the slides that I just mentioned, go to Tiny that you just saw here. Go to tinyurl.com/agiletraining and you can download this. And of course, if you want to learn more about our measurement tool, Agility Health Radar, you can go there. Let's look at some questions. Okay, the book. The book was Patrick Lencioni's book called The Advantage. All right, what other questions? Oh, what has been my experience with government and state organizations? You know what? To be honest with you, Richard, I think this is from Richard Lima, they're starting to transform. They really are. I think there's a fire being lit under all of us right now, whether you're state, whether you're government, whether you're federal. all of us are starting to realize the old way of operating, and actually I would even say in the government even more, there's multi-billions of dollars being lost because of, quite frankly, just bad planning, not having the right teams together, not organizing, relying too much on your vendors, not having enough visibility. So I would say that this is relevant to all of them. Really, I really do believe that. And why not have servant leadership in the government, right? Government is here to serve us. Okay, let's see, what else? Other questions. We've got, does the community or another group audit the work of the teams or compliance with recommended standards? Okay, so Pardo's asking about, does the community or practice also do some auditing? Yes, but lightweight audit. So think of auditing and governance in Agile. If you're coming into kind of that very traditional, I am going to watch what you're doing and tell you what you're doing wrong and ping you on it, or kind of punish you, then it's not going to be as welcome. But if you're coming in to do just an assessment to say, hey, here's the areas that you can improve on, I think that would be a great service for the community or practice to offer, right? Which is, hey guys, can we come in and just kind of check on, as a team, really you should come in with the mission of providing value and helping the teams grow, as opposed to judging and punishing. If you come at it from that attitude, Agile teams will absolutely welcome any kind of health assessment or retrospective to help them improve. And of course, they know there are guidelines, there are standards and best practices, of course. Aprana said the problem is that most leadership teams, managers through VPs, do not want to give away day-to-day task management. Strategic thinking is hard. It's easier to show value by creating and living with the busy work. Yes, but that has to change. That's exactly what we just talked about. You cannot be in the weeds anymore. If you want to transform your organization, you can't stay in the weeds. You have to build leaders that build teams. So I agree with you that that is the problem we have today, but hopefully you guys have gotten a roadmap for beginning to transform. Thank you all so much for listening and for being here with us. I hope you've gotten something. And actually, since I have just a couple minutes left, I really want to ask you, tell me one thing you've learned from today that you're committing to going and doing. So this is the action plan. Is there something you've learned from today that you feel that you're going to go do?